All right, Commissioners, if you will, appreciate, first of all, great turnout. We welcome those in our audience as well. And in compliance with the governor's order, let me read his order. Pursuant to an executive order issued by the Honorable Bill Lee, Governor of the State of Tennessee, as a reasonable measure to protect the safety and welfare of Tennesseans while ensuring that government business may continue in a manner that is open and accessible to the public, the Governor has declared that the provision of the Open Meetings Act, Tennessee Code Annotated, Title 8, Chapter 44, Part 1, are suspended to the extent necessary to allow a governing body as defined in Tennessee Code Annotated Section 844102, including the Putnam County Board of Commissioners, to meet and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of members physically present at the same location. The Putnam County Board of Commissioners has determined that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. This meeting shall be conducted by electronic means and shall be open and accessible to public attendance by electronic means. It is acknowledged by the Putnam County Board of Commissioners that the executive orders do not in any way limit existing quorum or voting requirements under the law. It is further acknowledged by the Putnam County Board of Commissioners that all provisions of Tennessee Code Annotated Section 844108C will remain in effect, and this meeting shall be conducted in a manner consistent with Article 1, Section 19 of the Tennessee Constitution. I'll call this commission to order and ask Mr. Clerk, if you will, call the roll. Sorry. Okay. Would you call us to order there, Major? Major's always thinking kind of I'm going to call it just two, please, for our invocation.
Okay, tonight we're pleased to have David Hill with us for invocation of Bible College, and tonight given. Thank you.
Would you bow with me, please? Gracious God, eternal Father, we are thankful that you've allowed our eyes to open and see such a beautiful day, to enjoy the freedoms of this land and to enjoy the great blessings of this area that we live. Father, we are mindful, even we marvel at the blessings that you bestow upon us each and every day. We pray, Father, for this commission as they meet this hour, that their judgments would be just, that their decisions helpful to all, both small and great as we look at it. Father, we pray for wisdom always, which we know comes from you. Pray, dear Father, that you would be mindful of our nation. Very challenging time that we're in. You know that well. And we pray, Father, that you would be with those who are hurting from the dreadful effects of this virus that we're facing. Father, it be your will, we pray that we could be delivered from that virus. We could see a better day and a new day even, Father, if it's your will. We also pray for those of this county who are still hurting and have been greatly affected by the storms earlier this year. Pray, Father, that they can see relief. We pray that we can be instruments of help in this time. Thank you, Father, for loving us. We pray for your mercy always, and we're thankful, Father, that you have blessed this land in the way that you have. May we ever be those who are righteous. May we be those who are thankful. Father, we pray that life will be used to the building up of others. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please join me with the pledge to the flag.
All right. Now to get back in order, Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll, please? Yes, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your handsets, everybody press yes. Just stop right there for me. Everybody press. All right. I have two handsets here tonight. Forward with us. All right. So online with us tonight is Mr. Ford. Are you present?
I'm here.
All right. And also, Mr. Holmes, are you present?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. All right, Mr. Chairman, all 24 are present. There is a quorum. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I appreciate that very much. Item number 5 is the approval of the agenda. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on approval of the agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And motion carries. Item number 6 is approval of the previous minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Got a motion and a second on approving the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries. Thank you very much. I'm going to make a statement here, if I can, prior to going deeply. We have just approved the agenda. That means the items that exist on the agenda are the items we have planned to discuss, and you have approved that discussion. I know there are some extenuating circumstances and issues that may affect some of those issues, but as chair, it is my job to make sure we maintain focus on the issue at hand, and I intend to do so. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings in any way. That's not the intention. The intention is that we stay focused. We can be confused enough without allowing things that have no effect on the thing we're voting on into the discussion process. So please don't take it personal if I call down and say that's not relevant or don't accept that conversation. It's not the intention to silence anybody. That's not the purpose at all. But we've got a long agenda, probably with a lot of discussionary items, and I want to make sure we cover each one of those questions that you might have as it relates to that. So I hope you understand what I just did, and again, understand how I intend to chair this meeting. And don't get your feelings hurt if I respectfully, call you down that that's not part of what our discussion should be. So having said that, there's also a lot of folks in our audience who have asked to speak. I have talked with many of them. I have asked them what their concern was and what their discussion was going to be concerning. And to those who had comments they wanted to make about the issue, I have allowed them and told them I would give them 3 minutes during that discussion as long as they kept their comments about the issue. Once we journey away, then again, that's not where we want to go. We want to make sure. I also have told a large majority of the folks who have called me, who wanted to make statements that were not pertinent to the issue, if they could speak, I have given those folks my permission to speak at the end of the meeting under the new business. So we're not again trying to silence anybody. We'll allow people to speak, but we're going to stay focused on the issues on the agenda that you just approved. I hope that's clear. I'm looking around. Thankfully, we're together because I'm looking for confusion. I hope it doesn't exist, but if it does, we'll address that when it does. Okay. Didn't want to make a long speech, but I do want you to know we got a long night if we don't stay focused. Okay? Thank you very kindly. Item number 7 is unfinished business and action thereon, and we'll report from standing committees, and planning is first.
No unfinished business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Physical review?
No unfinished business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And nominating?
No unfinished business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move forward into item B, report of special committees. Are there any special committees wishing to make a report?
Not to my knowledge.
If not, we'll move to C, other unfinished business, if there be. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 8, which is new business, and we'll start with the report of standing committees there as also, and we will begin with planning.
Thank you, Chairman Atwood. The Planning Committee, item A, consider the sale of the old fairground property, and this comes without recommendation.
Chair, I'd like to make a
If you don't mind, I haven't got a second yet. I'll need a second before we can
second.
continue. Did I hear one?
Second.
Okay. Now I have a motion and a second. We can move, and yes, sir, Mr. Rogers, you're recognized.
I'd like to amend the motion to pay next month's.
I'll second
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to delay this discussion until next meeting. Is there any discussion about that amendment?
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Mr. Neal?
Jordan?
Jordan? Excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you.
So does everybody understand where we are? We've got an amendment on the floor to put this off until next month as far as discussion is concerned. Any discussion, any more questions about that? Seeing none, if you favor the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
Real quick, Commissioner Atwood.
If I may, yes, he after I'd already called for the vote, but we're going to take the amendment with the motion. We still have to do that because it is an amendment, and at that point, I will recognize you, Commissioner Donadio. So, again, those that are against the amendment, say no. Motion carries. Now we'll address the motion as amended. And Mr. Donadio, I'll let you begin the discussion there.
My only question was the purpose for changing. I'm not arguing with it. I'm just wondering what the purpose for putting it off till next month is.
We were supposed to talk about it in committee. We voted to send it down without recommendation, and we would discuss it in work session last week. We never got to it.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
we've had no discussion on it.
Yeah, we're not.
I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Yeah, we're under no gun for this to have to come up tonight. I guess is probably the consideration too. Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, so I know this is where things get confusing, but you have to vote on the motion as amended, which means we're doing exactly the same thing you just did. We're voting to move this till next month for discussion. Everybody understand that? What you're voting on? All right, favor that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Item B, consider approval of a request from Speedway LLC for easements at the entrance of the Fairgrounds on South Jefferson Avenue, and this comes without recommendation.
Before we move, I need a motion and a second, whatever that motion may be.
Second.
Need a motion first. What is the motion to do so or not to do so?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second to approve allowing these easements, and I know that Speedway is present. Again, be happy for them to speak. Do you have questions, and would you like to hear from them? Are you ready to vote? I mean, that's up to you guys. Commissioner, yes, Jonathan.
Yes, I would like to know just some of the details of the plan and when they're planning to move forward, and I would also like to know what consideration the county is getting in exchange for this easement.
Okay, thank you very kindly, and I'll let the mayor, if he will, speak and introduce our guest from Speedway, if that's okay, Mayor Porter. Sure, Mr. Chairman. We have Jonathan Walker and Kelly Roberts here from Speedway to speak to you and answer any questions you have. Also, County Attorney Jeff Jones has already been working on this, and he may want to speak also, Mr. Chairman.
All right, if you'll identify yourself, please, to the mic and tell us who you are and so forth.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is Jonathan Woker. I'm a planner representing Speedway. My address is 5721 Dragon Way, Cincinnati, Ohio. And I do have with me tonight Kelly Roberts, who's the Speedway representative for the real estate department. And we're here requesting that the county commission allow Speedway to have access on Fairgrounds Street. We're requesting 2 driveways for a proposed convenience store that Speedway wants to build there. They have a contract to buy the former Payless Shoes property that's vacant, and our plan would have access on South Jefferson as well as on Fairground Street. And so we're asking for that access approval. We believe this would be a public benefit. This will be about a $3.8 million investment and will revitalize a portion of a vacant property and be an improvement to the corridor. This will also result in jobs, about 15 to 20 jobs, including several managerial jobs. And Speedway does offer benefits to those employees, including medical and dental and retirement planning. And we also think this will be a good access management control. By having this access on the private drive allows us to have cross-connection between Taco Bell and the other restaurants and potentially reduces trips on South Jefferson Avenue. So that's our request tonight. We have presented our information to the mayor and to the county attorney and would ask for your approval. We have not purchased this property yet, so the purchase is contingent upon this decision as well as the city approvals. And we have shared our plan with the city, and they've indicated support for our project.
And first of all, let me apologize to Mr. Nadio. I'm sorry with the screen behind me. I didn't see the order of business. Commissioner Williams, were there other questions? Did he answer the questions you had?
Well, the other one I had is what consideration is the county receiving for that?
Mr. Chairman, if you let the county attorney, he can address that. That'll be okay.
Mr. Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you. Well, Commissioner Williams, I met with the appraiser that the county used last week at the site. Let me give you a little bit of history, just and not to plow this ground too much. Right now, the county commission in 1993 gave an easement to Taco Bell to go up Fairground Street. And as most of you know, Fairground Street is neither a city street nor is it a county road. It is a private drive that is owned by the county, part of the fairgrounds. Okay. Met with the appraiser out there last week to try to see what would be a proper price for this. Because the 2 things that the county has to do in a situation like this is, number 1, there has to be a public purpose. And number 2, there has to be consideration. The public purpose is, as the Speedway people have said, if you guys find this as being a public purpose, increased sales tax, increased property tax, increased jobs, all of those are public purposes. One of the things that I asked the appraiser just to make certain of, being an attorney, anytime that you put an encumbrance on a piece of property, I'm not so sure that's always good. But I asked the appraiser that, and he said, in this particular situation, it's probably not going to make that big a difference because people use Fairground Street as a cut-through street anyway. Secondly, he said that depending on the type of development, which is what these people are speaking of here, where you have a nice gas station, it might actually enhance the commercial value of that real estate that the county is wanting to sell at some point in the near future. So those are all good things, and those could be potential public purposes that you as a commission could find. As far as the calculation of the consideration for the easement, he said it would be around 65 cents per square foot, all right? And I can walk you through the math if you'd like me to do that, but that's what it would be. And what we would need, and I explained this to the Speedway folks before the meeting tonight, is that if the commission wanted to approve this, what you would do is you would give the county mayor the authority to enter into an agreement by the square footage, and then the engineers for Speedway would have to present to us
the amount of square footage that they're requesting, and then we would just simply do the math. Okay? Now, one other caveat. The easement that was given to Taco Bell in 1993, there's a kicker on there that says that it's not going to interfere with any county use of that property, of the fairgrounds. So I don't think that's ever been a problem, to my knowledge anyway. But does that answer your question, Commissioner?
It does. Thank you, Mr. Jones, and thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Donadio?
I think I'm flashing from my last question. It
Okay.
never cleared.
Very good. Thank you very kindly. Commissioner Wilson.
Yes, sir. I just needed to make a statement. I spoke with County Attorney Jeff Jones last week. When it comes up for a vote, because of my profession, I will make financial gain from a sale from one of these parcels, so I will be abstaining from the vote, and I just wanted to make that a public record as to why.
Thank you very kindly, Commissioner Noble, and exactly what you need to do. So I appreciate that. Commissioner Jordan Owaza.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I guess to whet my curiosity, you did answer my question on Payless. I was wondering if the former Payless property was involved. I understand, I think, the Tennessee Title Cash property. Is there any other properties, I guess would be my question, though, surrounding those two that are involved in this purchase, or is it just those two?
It's a total of about 3.4 acres, and then Speedway would have about 1.5 acres at those Fairgrounds Street and Jefferson. So that leaves a residual property of about a little less than 2 acres.
Gotcha. Is that coming from, like, I guess, the parking lot from the shopping center?
It does. It kind of wraps around the church.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Christopher.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for being available to address questions. So you currently have, I have questions. You currently have a Speedway fueling center there, is that correct?
No, sir. We have a contract to purchase the property. It's currently a vacant shoe store, Payless shoe store, and then a commercial strip center behind. There's a combination of commercial buildings there.
Okay. And is this going to be a fueling center for cars, trucks, long-distance trucks, all of the above?
Only for auto vehicles and, residential trucks. So it's not for commercial fueling lanes. This would only be for what I'd call residential customers.
Okay. Is that a guarantee of any sort or speculation?
That's our design for the site, and our plans that we intend to submit to the city are for that. Frankly, this site's a little small for a commercial fueling lane. I can't project in the future that we might be able to buy other property and change that, but at this time, we're looking at auto service.
Okay. So unlikely to have commercial vehicles going over the private road, which you're seeking an easement for.
That's correct. And part of our design is to lay out the fuel delivery truck, and the fuel delivery truck is not intended to use proposed Fairgrounds Street. So, our fuel delivery as well as our other delivery trucks are not intended to use Fairgrounds.
Okay, thank you. And I have one question for Attorney Jones. Is there any concern about some of our future development plans or proposed sale of the fairgrounds, which this easement might impact in terms of what the future owner of that land and their intentions and desires might be around some of these properties?
Certainly, and that was what I addressed a little earlier. That's an excellent question, because as I said, from an attorney standpoint, anytime that you put an encumbrance on a piece of property like an easement or something such as that, to me, that seems like a bad thing. But the appraiser that I met with last week said just the opposite. He said that based on the type of development that they are intending, that it actually could enhance the value of the property if it were to become like a commercial retail type place over there, or even if it was used for residential property, having a gas station coming out from Fairgrounds Street might enhance the value of the property. It would not. He said it would not detract from the value anyway.
But is that from an aesthetic perspective or from an increase, because there will be increased traffic on that street by virtue of this easement?
Yes and yes, possibly. I think that would probably, the city engineers could be in a better position to tell you about the increased traffic. I will say this, Fairground Street is actually in between two traffic signals, and to my knowledge, the city has no plans to put a signal on Fairground Street anytime soon because it's too close to the one on Veterans Drive. And then, of course, you got the signal that comes out from where you turn into Walmart. So it's right in between those things. When I was out there with the appraiser last week, we saw people using Fairground Street as a cut-through to go to Rotary Centennial Way and then a shortcut to Veterans, but not that many people because there's no signals there. So who knows about the traffic and so forth.
Okay, so would just one last question.
Sure.
Would any increase by virtue of the access to and from Speedway require some anticipated or in additional maintenance beyond what we've serviced that road in the past?
Commissioner, I'm not really in a position to say that. I don't know what kind of increased traffic there would be. I really don't.
Okay, thank you.
If I can address that, it doesn't belong to anybody. It's private, so the city or the county, the additional, whoever upkeeps that road, Mr. Jones, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because it is privately owned by the county, do we maintain that road?
We maintain that road now.
Okay.
Of course, if we were to sell it, of course, Fairground, just so that you know, Rotary Centennial Way hooks Veterans into Fairground Lane there. Fairground Lane actually goes all the way around the fairgrounds. And that's, again, a privately owned drive by the county. But if the county sells the fairgrounds, that will go with it.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think our last meeting, I expressed some concerns about the same issue as Commissioner Christopher did. I have some concerns about giving ingress, egress for long periods of time when you have ingress, egress from main streets within the city. The future value of the fairgrounds property, I know attorney says, Fraser said wouldn't necessarily have a negative positive effect on it. I'm not sure I agree with that because you do have access on Veterans Drive and Walnut, sure. But the most used street of all those is certainly the front street and Jefferson. And if we give this away, well, not give it away, if we sell that right, I'd like to know, is we going to make this right of easement permanent as long as you guys own it? Or if you decide to sell it to someone else, does the right of easement go with it? What do we have from a county standpoint in that regard? Either one of
I think the question is, what is the term of the easement and the conditions for extenuating that? Is it perpetuity, or is in fact there is some characteristic that could cause that easement to go away? Is that your question, Mr. Martin?
Yes, it is, because again, I think it can have a negative impact on that much land, where the ingress egress side, the most used and the most traffic is going to be on the Jefferson.
So the question is, Mr. Jones, is that had been addressed in this particular issue, and if not, will it be? And your thoughts, please.
I don't think that has been addressed, but certainly that's up to the commission. And basically what I'm hearing Commissioner Martin say is that if he were in favor of doing this, and I'm not suggesting that you are, Jim, but if you were, you would not want it to run with the easement to run with the land. In other words, be specific to Speedway. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I'm hearing. We have no idea when that property is going to sell, or when we intend to sell it, or when someone comes and makes the best offer on it. And if we do, and they say our offer is contingent upon us getting full easement, to Jefferson, all the way through. We want a single, easement. We don't want to share it.
Unobstructed.
Correct.
Unobstructed.
Unobstructed.
If the buyer, in other words, of the fairgrounds
and
wants
if
these
that-
to go away.
And big developers, ingress, egress is key to a sale on a big piece of property where retail is involved. So that's my concern. It was last week. If we can sort of work through that, and understand it better, I'd feel better. I think Commissioner Christopher has indicated. Am I correct?
I guess at this point, I'm looking, if you're trying to make a motion or amend this motion, Mr. Martin, that would be certainly your privilege to do so. As it's presented right now, we don't have that restriction, so.
I'd like to know before I vote, what is the deal? What are we agreeing to on the permanent easement? How long will it be, or does it go in perpetual? Is it perpetual? What sort of restrictions do we have with that? Are there any other additional restrictions on the easement that you're asking?
At this point, I think Mr. Jones has alluded there is not. So if we're going to vote on the motion that's on the floor right now, we're voting to give these easements as it's presented. That means with no restriction. Again, I say, if that's part of something you want to add, it's going to have to be in the form, and I see you standing, Mr. Jones, so I'll allow you to address what I'm saying. Maybe I'm right or wrong.
No, you're right on target. And just so that the commission knows, we have not had ongoing negotiations with the Speedway people. The only thing that we have done is have the same package that all of you have seen, other than a couple of calls to say, hey, you need to come to the commission and make a presentation. But we've not had any kind of negotiations with them because we don't know what the will of the commission is on this situation.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Jones. That's a concern. I'd like to know that before I vote.
Then it sounds like you want to defer this until you're able to assume.
I would prefer to defer that till we know how that easement is written.
I've got a motion then, and do I have a second?
Second.
All right. So again, I'm look at me and let me see if I see clarity or confusion. The motion that's been amended and that Mr. Martin has made is that do you have a timeline that you would like to?
No, I do not.
Okay.
As soon as we can get it.
I would really like to see us put that because we don't want to hold the development up. Certainly, these people have talked with property owners and the purchase of that land is advantageous to our county and to our city as far as the revenues are concerned. So I don't want to hold them up, but I certainly don't want, again, for anyone to be unclear or to have information that they don't understand. So having said that, yes,
then
Mr.
I will
Martin.
say, let's get that information prior to the next meeting.
All right. So, Mr. Jones, I'm sorry, Mr. Porter.
Chairman, we can make that decision tonight, and I understand Commissioner Martin's issue, but that's something that y'all can decide tonight. If you want it to be perpetual, I'm not sure what Speedway's, I think as long as you have the Speedway there, you want it to be there, and after that's gone, how many years that is, if you want that to go away, that'll be up to you. But let's make that decision tonight. That's a very easy decision. We know what the price per square foot is. We know what they're requesting. You've already done it with Taco Bell many years ago. We've not had any issues with that. We don't see any issue with it with the sale of the fairgrounds. So we've got a business opportunity here that's going to bring jobs and taxes and fuel taxes and property taxes and everything to Cookville and Putnam County. So I just ask that you make that decision tonight and we don't put these folks off because they're on a deadline with the option on the property, and I don't want to delay that any if y'all be willing to do that.
And again, I agree. That's what we said. So I guess, Mr. Martin, and because you are the one who seems with the concern, that the motion could be, or we could add a restriction that it stays as long as Speedway is there and utilizing. If it changes ownership, then we can put a stipulation in that would be renegotiated at that time. Would that be fair and legal, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, that would. And just as a reminder, they're requesting actually 2 easements.
Yes.
They're requesting not just an easement of ingress and egress for the Speedway, but also for ingress and egress for the house that is behind the current strip mall. which actually they have a driveway that comes out onto Fairground Street anyway. It's been there for years and years. But they're wanting to extinguish the easement that goes to that house that goes across the lot where the Speedway would be located. So they're actually asking for 2 easements. But you guys can make that decision tonight or give Mayor Porter the authority to negotiate along the parameters that you guys set.
I'll trust you.
Because I have a motion on the floor, I want to be true to that. So, Mr. Martin, I'm looking at you. If you want your motion voted on, then we'll move forward with that vote or discussion on it. But right now, he's asked that it be delayed. Do you want to stay with your motion?
Again, let me preface this. I want business there. I want them to be there. My concern is long-term easement. And my concern right now is that it might knock us out of a real good deal on the fairground sale. That's my concern. So I'm willing to give up on it if that's the way you guys want to go. It's just a concern I have. I've dealt with a lot of property, and most of you in this room have too. And easements can be a real problem down the road, a real problem.
So I'm going to ask again, sir, do you want us to vote on your motion? Because I have allowed a motion on the floor and a second for a delay until next month. Do you want that voted on?
I would feel better if we have time to know how that's going to be orchestrated and determined.
All right, folks, I have allowed a motion. Do you understand the motion on the floor? It's to delay for a month. That's what we're going to vote on, and I'm going to open discussion on that amendment. And we'll clear the board and start over. Does anybody, and I'd rather you raise your hand because I know Mr. Bennett had wanted to address the total motion, but at this point we got an amendment. And so I have 2 hands up over here, which I'm going to recognize, but I want to look out there and make sure you all understand. We are going to vote on this because it is on the floor. And so discussion on that, I'm going to start with Mr. Porter.
Mr. Chairman,
Who seconded that?
I understand Mr. Martin's concern, and I think we can address that in the agreement with Speedway. You can always put a stipulation in there that if they ever do away with the Speedway or look to sell the property for the easement to be carried forth to the buyer, it would have to come back before the county commission for them to make a decision if they wanted to do that or not. I think it'd be a very easy stipulation to put into the agreement.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to clarify, we would want that to be in perpetuity. I mean, for some obvious reasons. The uncertainty of having a term, let's say 5 years or 10 years with some renewal is really hampers our ability to plan and understand what restrictions. So, we would be able to work with the mayor on conditions of potential transfer, some other stipulation if that's to the board, to the commission's favor.
Thank you very kindly. Is there any other discussion about this amendment? Mr. Williams.
Do you have options on the property, and if so, when do they expire?
We do. I don't know the date of, I'm going to ask Mrs.
Put it this
Roberts.
way, I guess we're
Yes, sir.
getting right to it. If we were to delay this 1 month, would that put that in jeopardy?
Will 1 month delay jeopardize our contract?
Just for clarity, Mr. Williams, if I may, what I heard them say was that their purchase and their moving forward was dependent upon them having this easement as long as they're there. So whatever changed to that, recognize he has already indicated that that's not going to be okay with them. I'm not trying to talk you into anything. Again, I'm just trying to make sure and clear that you understand what it is that you're voting on, okay? On the amendment, Mr. Bennett?
I think change to that as well.
Okay.
Second easement is for the house actually facing the fairground property.
I believe it faces Jefferson Avenue. But
It has an address off of South Jefferson.
yeah, it does. They currently have a driveway on Fairground. And so
I'm trying to picture, when you come off Jefferson, you go around the curve, the house on the right.
Yes.
Correct.
So right now, their main entrance is that road on the Fairgrounds property.
That's correct.
So if the easement goes to that house, and whoever buys it, if this goes to forever, they'll have to maintain the road at least from that house back out to Jefferson for the house. Correct? They have to have that access.
When you say they'll have to maintain it, you're talking about
Whoever buys the property, they'll have to, we give an easement to that house. They have to maintain the road from that house back out to Jefferson.
I don't know which way the easement is going to go from the house, because that easement could go from the house, because there's a driveway that exits onto Fairground Street right now from that house. And I think that basically what they do, and I actually observed them the other day, coming in and going out, they're not coming from Jefferson. They're coming from Rotary Centennial, because it's a better access for them. Too busy to get out onto Jefferson, I'm presuming. So I don't know how much of an easement they want, which direction it's going to go. I just don't know.
And the other question is, when we dispose of county property, you generally have to have a public chance that wants to bid on it. I assume an easement is treated differently in this case?
Yeah, it is. They're just asking for an ingress and egress, which is the same thing that Taco Bell did back in 1993. I don't think it requires a bid or
just want to make sure.
Yeah, advertising. That's a good question, though.
Okay. The motion on the floor is to delay. Any other questions or discussion?
Wait, for one.
Mr. Martin?
For one, delay it until next meeting, not just a delay. Delay next meeting.
Okay, that's what.
And I will, one more comment. If I don't want to hold up commerce, I don't want to hold this up. But if you're getting ready to tell us that the deal is off, if we can't give it to you tonight, I won't be happy about it, but I will take off my motion to the floor. Tell me, are you prepared to wait 30 days?
Unfortunately,
Please identify yourself, please.
I'm sorry, I'm Kelly Roberts. I'm the real estate representative for Speedway. Unfortunately, we're working with several different contracts that have different timelines. We can get some questions answered that may satisfy everybody. I would prefer not to wait an additional 30 days because it's going to push me to ask for additional time. We may need to get through site plan approval, which may or may not be guaranteed because I'll have to renegotiate with the sellers. So it does put us in an odd position of possibly not having enough time.
Well, you have a representative here too.
Yes, I do.
The real estate representative, that's correct. I would have contracts that I would have to renegotiate because they would, if time runs out, then we're at an expiration. We have to ask for time. If the seller chooses not to give it, then all this time is gone to a deadline.
I'm sorry, I could not hear you. Would you,
Yeah, speak into the mic, please.
and identify yourself, please?
I'm Jody Thornton with Exit Real Estate Solutions, and I represent the buyer in this case. We've got a couple of sellers. We've got timelines when the contract expires. We've already run into several easement issues on this property, so the timeline has already been pushed. It's clearly up to the sellers whether they want to extend the contract, and so without asking for it, it's in their hands, not ours.
Let me
I've
say.
got one question.
Okay,
Respond
let me
to what
say
you
one
said.
more thing if I can. From what I'm hearing, they're off the table if we don't give them an easement as long as they own the property. So my question is, Mr. Martin, what information are you wanting to delay this for? What information are you expecting to get in the next 30 days that will answer whatever question, given what I just told you? They're not going to accept any stipulations that hinder them as long as they own the property and as long as they're doing business as Speedway. So again, let me reiterate, I'm asking you, sir, because it's your motion, to stipulate exactly what it is you want that will clarify all this for you in 30 days, please.
Well, I'll ask the same as I did the first time. I have some concerns about it. I'd like to know what our deal is gonna be, what we're gonna actually end up negotiating with you on some sort of an easement. If this is gonna be a wide open easement or period and no restrictions on it, whatever, I needed to know that. And I was not getting an answer to that. So that's the reason I said, give you time to think about it, give us time to ask questions and think about it. That's 30 days. But if you're not gonna give us 30 days, it's a moot point. I don't want to lose your deal either. But I think it seems to me that you said you had some other issues on, or you made a statement that you had other issues on other easements. What are those and where are they?
Well, it's taking us time to get to this point to negotiate the relocations of the easements for the adjacent property owner. They had an encumbrance across the property that we are buying, and it's taken us till this point to get their agreement to relocate their easement around our proposed site plan. So that time is on us that we've spent. But I don't mean to be, our request is for an access easement to allow the two driveways as proposed to cross from the private street to South Jefferson Avenue. And we didn't stipulate this, but, in perpetuity or in some condition if it's related to the ownership or operation of the facility.
So what I'm hearing you, Mr. Martin, and I'm just trying to be clear all the way through.
I want to be clear.
Absolutely. That's what we're in,
I have no problem with
the
that.
interest is. So what I'm hearing you say is you'd like to have the negotiated deal within 30 days for us to talk about the detail, devil in the details. So what you want and what you'd like to is for our mayor and Speedway to negotiate the final details of that agreement, present them to the county commission for next month's vote.
Only 30-day delay, up or down in 30 days.
And am I accurate in what I just said? All you're wanting is the details, exactly
I want to know what those are, yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Porter, would you like to address that? I'll give you a second. While doing so, Mr. Moss, I'll recognize you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my concern about this is how is this going to affect our big project of selling the old fairgrounds, what's left?
And certainly,
can somebody answer that?
A good question. And again, Mayor Porter, do you want to speak to both of the? Well, first of all, is can we negotiate the details of this easement with Speedway and have it done before our next meeting? And secondly, Mr. Moss wants to know how it would affect the sale of the fairgrounds if, in fact, we do allow this.
It won't affect the sale of the fairgrounds. I think Mr. Jones already addressed that. Our appraiser that we used to appraise the fairgrounds to start with said it could even increase the value of the fairgrounds having the Speedway located there. So they don't think it'll affect it in any way. Mr. Martin, I've talked to them. They're okay as long as Speedway owns the property, let the easement stay, and then if they ever sell the property or want to sell it, then they'd come back to the county commission, and the commission would decide if they want to give them the continuance of the easement for it to go to the new buyer. To me, I think we're overcomplicating this. We're looking at 65 cents a square foot. Once they come up with the square footage, we'll work out all the details. We'll have your stipulation in there. And if you give me the authority to do that, we can move forward with them without it having to come back to the county commission. I just think we're overcomplicating this. This is just my opinion.
I don't want to complicate it. I just want to know. I think with that big a piece of property that it affects and can negatively impact the future sale. I mean, I'm just telling you, anytime you have easements, any owner, you guys are in the development. Are easements important to you?
We're here requesting an easement because this development won't work without it.
I understand, but.
So I think that answers your question.
So it is important to you?
It is important.
Sure.
Just remember, Commissioner Martin, the interest of the fairgrounds is an old entrance that's been there for, 50?
I understand all that.
But I'm just saying, most of the entrance to that property is not going to be
I'll
where
say
you're
it
looking
one
at.
more time. My only concern is a potential buyer and finds out they do not, if they want the same deal, we may or may not want to do that one. I'm talking about on easement. if they buy it, they may want 100% of the easement, not sharing it with two other groups. I don't know that. We don't, none of us know that. But it could be an impediment. I withdraw. I don't want to hold this up anymore. I will withdraw my motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
You may, Mr. Jones.
I think, and this speaks to what you're saying, Commissioner Martin, and also what you're saying, Mayor Porter, is I think that, and what we've said at the outset, is that the easement that you're speaking of would not run with the land. And what that means is that it only is applicable to these people right here, that if they sell, then the easement goes away. And then they would be forced to come back before the county commission to whoever purchased or whoever purchased the Speedway property subsequent to these folks would have to come back and ask for another easement of ingress and egress.
I would certainly hope, I've withdrawn my motion, but I would certainly hope that you would cover that in our deal, that if they ever move or ever sell it to someone else, this goes away. I would think that's what we would certainly do in any case.
So again, I've heard the motion has been removed from the table. Let me say this to you. At this point, then, we need a motion to allow our mayor to negotiate with Speedway with the stipulation that it, as Mr. Jones just alluded to, if that's what you want to do, that it stays with Speedway as long as there's a Speedway. But we're going to free our mayor and Speedway to do the negotiation based upon that. And again, we need that in the form of a motion. And Mr. Jones, please keep me legal.
Okay, I think I can help you with your motion, and I'm not suggesting that this is something that you want to do or that you don't want to do. This may be the way to frame the motion if you decide that this is how the commission wants to proceed. Is first of all, that you guys, as you move, that you find that there is a public purpose to granting this easement, and that you give Mayor Porter the authority to enter into an agreement subject to the approval of the county attorney and the legal stuff with the Speedway developers for an easement of ingress and egress to the Speedway development, as well as an easement for ingress and egress for the owner of the house that's in the corner of Fairground Lane or Fairground Street, for an amount not less than 65 cents per square foot. And that as part of the motion, both easements, most owners of the easements must agree that it will not interfere with the county's use of the fairgrounds, which is the same stipulation that was placed on the Taco Bell easement, and that the easement shall not run with the land, but that shall only apply to these two owners.
I agree with that wording. I'll make that motion.
Second. All right, now then, we do have a motion back on the floor in a second that would be worded like Mr. Jones has just alluded to. And at this point, I open for discussion. And Ms. Dunn, would you like to speak to that now? You are first.
Yes, just to clarify and to piggyback off what Commissioner Martin was saying, these easements, the one we have with Taco Bell and the one if we enter into one with Speedway, they will encumber our deed when selling the property. That will be noted on our deed, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I've got a motion on the floor, and I've got a second. And just a second, please. Okay, Mr. Jones.
I'm sorry. They would be recorded at the Register of Deeds office, so they would be in the chain of title. I don't know that they'd necessarily be on the deed itself when we sell the fairgrounds. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And I'm just going to make one point. We're going to vote, folks. I serve on the regional planning. We face easements all the time on certain pieces of property, and the solution is the buyer knows up front that there is an easement. So if they're not interested in the purchase with that understanding, they know it up front. They can make the decision to purchase or not. So it takes care of itself as far as the sale of the fairgrounds, that the buyer is knowledgeable. Now, that's all I want to say. Unless there's someone else who asked to speak, we're going to take a vote.
Commissioner Ford, I thought, did.
I'm sorry?
Commissioner Ford, did he ask?
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Ford, do you want to speak? I'm sorry.
No, I didn't. I just been listening.
Okay, great. All right. If everybody understand the motion, look at me so I can see a confused face if it lies out there. Does everybody sitting and in the phone and on the phone understand what we're voting on?
Repeat it one more time so we know.
I don't know what Mr. Jones wants to go that, but the stipulation, if you'd like to repeat it, Mr. Jones.
Okay.
All right.
It's a motion to give Mayor Porter the authority to enter into an agreement, subject to the approval of the county attorney, with the Speedway developers for an easement for ingress and egress to the Speedway development, as well as an easement for ingress and egress for the house in an amount not less than 65 cents a square foot. As part of the motion, both Speedway and the owner of the house must agree that the use of these easements will not interfere with the county's use of the fairgrounds. Furthermore, the easement shall not run with the land, but shall only apply to the current owners of the Speedway and the house.
Okay, everybody clear? Yes?
Current owners, correct.
Everybody clear?
You
Favor
sure
the
gotta
motion,
make
say
sure.
aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries. Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chairman Atwood. Next up, item C, recommends approval for the Sheriff's Department to declare the following list as surplus assets to surplus and to sell via internet public auction, and it is a list of computer equipment. And I so move.
Second.
Got a motion, second. Any discussion on the sale? Favor the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Item D recommends approval that an appraisal be done on any property considered for purchase by the county, and I so move.
Got a motion and a second. Mr. Moss.
Who seconded that?
Who was? Ms. Reel? Were you the second? Okay. Ms. Reel. Mr. Moss.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend this to say any properties that the county's already in negotiation with or whatever, or offer zone to be excluded from this motion.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to amend the motion to state that anything now presently under negotiation or under option with the county be excluded from this motion. Now, the first thing I want to do is ask the mayor, are the two lots that will be considered tonight the only parcels that we are presently in negotiation to purchase?
Yes, sir.
So that's what we're talking about. The amendment will take those two properties off the demand for an appraisal. So the motion he made, and we had a second, was to not force an appraisal on those two parcels. Again, am I being clear? Mr. Martin.
As it was stated earlier, it says approval for an appraisal to be done on any property considered for purchase. It doesn't say anything about a sale. So if we want to sell a piece of property, we don't have to get an appraisal. Why wouldn't we say purchase or sell a piece of property?
Well, again, that would require an amendment. The motion on the floor, and again, I'm going to be very adamant about the discussions that we have be about the motions on the floor. Right now, we're on the amendment. The amendment is to eliminate this demand on properties that we're presently negotiating for. Once we do that, we will move toward the motion as amendment, and at that time, we'll address the issue of appraisals and how they should be considered. So right now, we're only talking about the amendment, and I hope that's clear to you. And I'll open any discussion that anybody has about Mr. Moss's amendment only. That's where we are. So do I have any discussion? I don't see any. So I'm going to call for a vote on the amendment. You're voting to amend this motion to exclude those two pieces of property. So that we're clear, still doesn't mean that we're going to demand an appraisal. We got to vote on that next. All we're doing is amending right now two pieces of property, basically, if the next motion passes. Okay? You following me? On the amendment. No discussion. Those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Clerk.
All right.
Again, yes vote means you're for the amendment. You're for excluding the two pieces of property from the demand for an appraisal. And I'm just going to tell you, well, let's go ahead, Mr. Clerk.
All right. Many of you have started. Continue on. If you favor the amendment, press yes. If you do not favor the amendment, vote no. You're strictly voting on the amendment. All right? Are we there? Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
All right, does any of you all at this point wish to change your vote anywhere? All right, Mr. Chairman. Ready? Hold on. Go back. Revote it. Go back here to vote. You have to bear with us a little bit, being in new situations. Let's do it again. No, I want it right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Technical difficulties, please take your handsets and let's do this one more time. If you favor the amendment only, vote yes. If you do not favor the amendment, vote no. Everyone do that, and it'll stop you right there. All right, again, sorry, Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
All right, I'm assuming anybody wish to change their vote anywhere while I'm at this point? Anywhere. All right. Callie? Mr. Chairman, you have 16 voting yes, 8 voting no, 0 abstain. Motion for the amendment carries. Give us just a passes.
Okay, I'll let
Just
them
a quick
work out the
second. Let's see if we
details
can
so
print this out.
that you'll understand now
Sorry,
where that
ladies and
puts
gentlemen.
us. We have added the amendment to a motion. So now we will vote on the motion as amended, which means a yes vote now means that you do want appraisals on any new parcel of land that the county negotiates to purchase. But the two that we're discussing as far as the parking lots tonight will not be a part of that. So now, again, I hope everybody understands. Mr. Donadio, please.
Yes, I'd like to amend the motion to say that any properties that we purchase or sell, that we have the appraisal, excluding these two, of course.
Second.
Okay, so what we're adding is if we sell. Previously, we were all only discussing those with which we were purchasing. So Mr. Donadio's motion is amended so that it's also including those properties that we might be interested in selling in the future. So, does everybody understand what that amendment now? And again, we will vote on the motion again. We aren't to the motion. This is an amendment. And so I open discussion on that amendment. Anybody? And
Mr. Chairman, my button.
I'm sorry?
My request to speak, Brett.
Okay. Mr. Rod, you don't wish to speak?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please, you're
Thank you, Mr.
recognized.
Chairman. Mayor Porter, do we already get appraisals on property we're going to sell?
We do if it's something big, but now, and I'd like for County Attorney Jones to speak to this. What y'all are doing now, you're getting this into the delinquent property tax sales that is going to affect that dramatically, and I don't know what the legal aspects of that going to be, but I'd like for County Attorney Jones to speak to that.
Sure. As far as the purchase of properties, the first bid at a delinquent tax sale is the county for the delinquent taxes, the interest, penalty, and the fees, subject to a year's right of redemption. And a lot of times when the county bids in the first bid on a piece of property, if it doesn't sell, if it's not desirable, the county ends up owning it. The best example that I can think of that, and a lot of times they're scrub properties, best example that I can think of that in past years is if you know where Cavalry Road is, where Chuck Johnson's nursery is, and Skyline Drive. There was a strip of property between those two roads that was probably about, Kathy, what would you say, 5 feet wide, maybe? Maybe. Well, the county ended up purchasing that at a tax sale because there were delinquent taxes on it, but nobody wanted to do that. I don't even know how you would get an appraisal on something like that. And certainly, you know, by statute, the Delinquent Tax Committee looks at properties that the county is going to sell that is purchased at delinquent tax sales. And I don't think, I mean, a lot of times if we can put those back into property tax making position, then we're lucky, and we do it. We certainly wouldn't want to get appraisals on those, I wouldn't think. It's whatever you guys want to do, but it's going to be difficult on those types of properties.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So does this motion include every time we go to sell, including delinquent property, pieces of property?
As I read, it says recommends that an appraisal be done on any property considered for purchase by the county. I mean,
I'd like to amend my motion to exclude delinquent properties.
Thank you.
All right, so you've substitute motion basically is what you've done.
Yes, please.
So that the amendment now reads with the that we want appraisals on property that we purchase or sell to the exclusion of delinquent property that the county is forced to accept. Am I accurate?
That is correct.
I need a second on that.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. So now we're again voting the amendment, and I'll open the floor if there is any discussion about that amendment.
Restate the amendment.
Okay.
Please.
And prepare, because we've got the board tied up, so I'm going to need you to raise your hand if you do want to speak to it. The amendment is, we've added the sale of county property will require an appraisal with the exception of selling of delinquent property, either buying or selling. That's the amendment. Is there any questions or discussion on the amendment? I say again, remember, we're going to vote on the motion. This doesn't make this and seal this in law until we pass it, the motion with this amendment, if this amendment passes. So, Mr. Martin, I'll recognize you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing, since the motion's already amended, is on the floor, what I was thinking is that we just set some limit on property that we own that's in excess of $100,000, that we do have to get an appraisal on it also, and that keeps out worrying about a $1,000 piece of property or $2,000 piece of property, eliminates those out. But certainly anything over, I'm gonna say, some number, I think arbitrary might be, 200,000 that we have to get an appraisal on it. I understand, AJ, what you're saying. I totally agree with you. It's just, I don't know that we want to get into the real small issues that probably wouldn't serve any purpose, but a larger amount. Yes, we're going to sell it. It's just as important to know what we're selling for as it is what we're buying.
And that's what the amendment, unless you're interested in amending the amendment to put a figure to it. And if you are, then that's a different issue altogether at this point, Mr. Martin, and that's totally acceptable. We can have two amendments. That is allowed within the Roberts rules. It certainly complicates it.
I would like to amend it to 200,000.
Okay.
Now, where's that figure going to work itself in?
Yeah, you're going to have to be a little clear about what you want to do, Mr. Martin. I'm not sure I understand.
We said any and all property. Then we had a discussion about, well, what do we do about taking over or repossessing it because of the tax delay? Well, you may have a piece of property that's worth $400,000 and $500,000 that's way behind. It may be a big piece of tract that's worth more than the house, but all of it together could be a sizable amount of money, or it could be a short amount. I don't think we need to be looking at $100. But
we're not, because his motion included all
delinquent property, regardless of the value of it, has been eliminated through his motion. So the value has no bearing on the amendment we have before us as far as what the value. Follow what I'm saying? So the only thing you would be changing is actually the main motion, that you want to put a limit on what we want an appraisal on, and that's not acceptable right now where we are. When we get to the motion, then you can amend it to with that verbiage if you wish. But right now, the amendment we have, and folks, I hope I'm being clear, because I sure want to be, is that we will require an appraisal on any property that we buy or sell, with the exception of delinquent property. That's that's the amendment that's on the floor right now. Has no bearing. A delinquent property has no bearing whatsoever on what the value of it is. Ms. Dunn's been wanting to speak. So, Mr. Martin, I'm not going to accept that motion at this point, because it needs to be done at a different time. Right now, I think it's been addressed with your concerns as it has. So, I think that motion is out of order right now. So I'm going to allow Ms. Dunn to speak to the amendment, and the amendment addresses Mr. Donadio's concern. Yes, Ms. Dunn.
No, I was going to speak to Commissioner Martin's discussion, but since that's been pulled, then I will withhold for now.
Okay. Yes, sir, Sam.
Is the First Amendment, his motion still in play about the option?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But it's not binding yet. It won't be binding until we get to the motion with the amendments. Right now, the amendment is Mr. Donadio's. He has excluded, he has added properties that we sell, and he has excluded those that are delinquent properties. That's the amendment. So, if there's no other discussion, we're going to vote on that amendment. If you favor the amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. Okay. Now that brings us to the motion. In order for this to become binding to the county, this has to pass with the two amendments added to it. Now all that means is, a yes vote means you want appraisals for selling and for purchasing on anything in the future, with the exception of delinquent property. That's where we are. If this motion passes, if you vote yes, that's what you want. If you vote no, it can be for whatever reason. You don't think we need appraisals on every piece of property. That's subject to each piece. I mean, I don't care what your position is. That's what you're voting on. A yes vote means exactly what I just said. A no vote means we will not have appraisals on future property, whether bought or sold. I'll accept at this point discussion on that. Mr. Moss, I saw you first.
We still got the First Amendment on the table, is that correct?
No, it's already passed.
The motion includes both amendments. That is correct, which means the properties under consideration for purchase tonight for parking are off the table. If this passes, if it doesn't pass, we don't have to worry about it, because we're not going to require appraisals on anything. Is that, you following what we're doing? So yes, both amendments are a part of this motion now, and I tried to be clear about what you're voting for. If you don't understand, look at me and raise your hand, and let's make sure you do, because we're fixing to vote.
We've been down this before. Just restate it one more time.
Okay. Here's what you're voting on right now. And if this passes, it becomes binding. We are now determining whether this is what we want to do as a county commission. The amendments are a part of it, and that the motion now states Putnam County will be required, basically, to receive appraisals on future properties that we purchase or that we sell, with the exemption being delinquent properties. That's what you're voting on. Does everybody look at me and understand, yes, I get where you are? Mr. Moss.
And currently under option.
That's already off the table. That passed on the amendment. That's become part of this. Properties 1 and 2 that we're going to discuss tonight have no bearing on how you vote on this amendment. Is that clear? Because again, if it passes, they're not included. If it fails, no properties are included. So, okay, and Mr. Moss, I'm still seeing a little confusion, so please ask your questions, please.
So if I understand you, number 1 and number 2 properties is going to wayside. We vote on this how? Yes or no?
Absolutely. Regardless of how this vote comes out, either for or against, properties 1 and 2 will not be required to have an appraisal. Clear?
No, sir.
It's not clear?
No, sir.
Okay. You made an amendment which
Yes.
eliminated them. That amendment passed. So it passes on to the main motion. We had a second amendment by Mr. Donadio, which also passed, and that passes it on to the main motion. So now the main motion is altered and amended to eliminate those 2 properties per your amendment and to include purchase and sale with the exclusion of delinquent property. So, and I know this is really confusing, which is why I'm going to sit right here as long as there's confusion to make sure that there's not. Folks, I don't want us to vote on something we don't understand, and it can really get confusing. Mr. Moss, please.
Well, I'm not clear, but let me ask you this way. If I vote yes, those 2 pieces of property is still on or off? Or
Either way you vote on this motion, they're off. Either way. Yes or no, those properties are done.
So we've killed.
Because you amended it to make sure they're done. And we passed that. So a yes or a no vote right now on the motion that we have on the floor has no bearing. It's already determined they will not be forced to have an appraisal on them. Either way, you can vote either way. All you're voting on really is, do you want appraisals on every future piece of property that we buy or sell? That's basically what you're voting on. Mr. Martin.
Well, I think some of the confusion was they might have determined those 2 properties. The issue is not about to buy or sell the 2 properties. It's about a value assessment. And that property.
So, again, and I'll ask Mr. Holmes and Mr. Ford, who aren't with us and who I can't see, if they have any questions as to what we're fixing to vote on.
No, sir.
All right. Is anybody else here have any questions on what you're fixing to vote on?
Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
You may, Mr. Ford, please.
I just want to reiterate, just remember, you're locking yourself into this, that if there's a deal comes along or something happens that we have to have something and we can't get an appraisal done on it for 90 days or 120 days, which is pretty common with the commercial appraisals anymore, and that may kill the deal. The other thing I'd ask is since you're voting on this and it going to require finances, since even though it's in planning commission, I still think you need a roll call vote on it.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. I really hope everybody's clear here, guys. I don't want any confusion because this is important. And so the only dumb question, as I said in work session, is the one that doesn't get asked. You're voting, do you want appraisals from this point on with every piece of property that we either buy or sell? Do you want it? Is that what you want? And so that's the ultimate purpose of what we're voting on. Do you want the appraisals on everything we do from this point on? Yes, sir, Mr. Sam.
We're voting on whether it's required. We can always get an appraisal on anything you buy.
Absolutely.
But we're voting on it's required on anything.
We are binding this on ourselves. That's exactly what this motion does. All right. I see no other discussion, no other hands, so I'm assuming everybody is clear. So, Mr. Clerk, I'm going to ask you to call the roll.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if everybody understands, wait before you vote, please. If you understand that this is the 2 amendments that's amending that, you ready? If you favor that, press yes. If you do not favor, vote no. Everyone please vote, and it'll stop you right there. All right, Mr. Holmes,
No.
Mr. Ford?
No.
Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hit the tally. Mr. Chairman, 11 votes yes, 13 votes no. That motion fails.
All right, we will not be demanding appraisals. That's what we just did, okay? Madam Chair.
Wow.
Thank you, Chairman Atwood, and that concludes planning's report.
Thank you very kindly for all of you for the participation and for the discussion. I applaud you for that. All right, item number 2 is fiscal review, and so, Mr. Chair, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fiscal Review Committee recommends approval of budget amendments to the county general fund, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on county general. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Clerk.
All right, seeing none, take your handsets. If you favor the motion, vote yes. If you're not in favor of the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere tonight? All right. Mr. Chairman, you have 24 voting yes, 0 no, 0 abstain. Motion carries. Give me just a second, Mr. Cassidy. Good. Thank you, sir.
Item B, Fiscal Review Committee recommends approval of budget amendments to the general purpose school fund, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on general purpose school? Mr. Clerk.
All right. Seeing none, if you take your handsets, you favor the motion, vote yes. If you're not in favor of the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Mr. Sandlin? Sam? Thank you, sir. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right. Mr. Chairman, you have 24 voting yes, 0 no, 0 abstain. Motion carries. Give me just a second. Give me a little more potency there, Ronnie. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Go ahead.
Item C, Fiscal Review Committee recommends approval for the Parks and Recs Department to apply for a Build Healthy grant in the amount of $50,000, and this grant requires no match, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Item D, and this came without recommendation, consider the purchase of jail property lots 1 and 2, and I do so move.
Second.
All right, so you're moving to purchase both pieces, and I have a second. Is that right, Mr. Chair?
Yes, and to be clear, that's at $1.3 million.
Okay. Now, this is where I'm sure we're going to have, which is fine, plenty of discussion. I embrace that. I don't want to silence anybody, but I'm going to say again, we're talking about purchasing 2 pieces, 2 lots. We're not talking about where the jail is or where the proximity of that building, the new construction is to anything. We're talking about whether we're going to purchase these 2. And I'm going to restrict the communication and the dialogue to this motion. So be aware, I'm not trying to be confusing, but I am going to hold us to that, or we'll be here all night and we'll confuse each other with other things that aren't pertinent to what we're voting on. So, having said that, I've got a motion and a second. And Mr. Bennett, you're recognized.
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment to that motion that we separate property 1 and 2 and vote on them individually.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second on the floor that we separate the 2 pieces. So I'll open discussion on the amendment. Mr. Donadio, is that what you wish to address?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please refresh my memory on how that affects the price of the lots if we buy them separately. In other words, it's 1.3 million if we buy the two of them together. How much are they in individual?
All right, the only way it will affect it is if we vote yes on one and no on the other.
That is correct.
And so the question you're asking is a difference of $200 and something thousand on the piece of property that we vote yes on. We have two options. One of them is if we buy one, it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, it's at $850. If we buy them both, they're at $650 each.
That's correct.
So
Thank you.
the only effect is, again, if we approve one and deny the other. So does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes.
Again, discussion on the amendment. Everybody understand what we're doing? He's asked to separate them as opposed to taking them together. All right. If you favor the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If you oppose the amendment, no. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
All right, take your handsets if you would, please. If you favor the amendment, vote yes. If you do not favor the amendment, vote no. Everyone, please vote. We're voting on strictly the amendment only.
Which means you're voting yes to separate, you're voting no to leave them together, okay? Yes is to separate, okay?
Mr. Holmes?
No.
Mr. Ford?
No.
All votes are in. Do anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right, Mr. Chairman, you have 7 voting yes, 17 voting no. That motion fails.
All right, so we're back to the original motion, which is to take both properties as one. We'll have a motion on the floor that we purchase those properties under the stipulations that we have in front of us at the price. And again, so now I'll open discussion on that motion. Mr. Sandlin, are you trying to push?
I am.
All right.
It's in there now.
Okay. I'll recognize you, Mr. Sandlin, if you'd like to speak
Electronics messed me up, I'm sorry.
to the motion.
Back in our work session last week, we talked about the property around the hospital, over $15 a square foot, the property that the city bought up on First Street, $16.60 a square foot. I meant to mention another thing is the property that we bought, we being the county commission, actually was bought the month before I got on the commission. In August of 18, this commission voted to buy the property from the Carter family between Spring and Broad on the west side of Maple. And my calculations, they paid about $8.90 a square foot for that. And that was, then we had to put in the drainage and we had to tear down the buildings and put in the drainage, et cetera. So this is, if we buy the two pieces together, about $7.50 a square foot. I just wanted to remind you, this body, before I got here, has already spent across the street more than $1 a square foot more than, didn't say that.
Thank you, Mr. Sandlin. Does anybody else want to discuss the motion? All right, I had some folks, I don't mind telling you, from the audience that called me concerning this. I told them basically the same thing that I told you. I would allow discussion or their comment related to the purchase of these two lots. We will not allow discussion as it relates to other items. Those have been taken care of, and if there are future times to discuss it, that's fine. So I had one who said that he wished to speak toward these properties. It has always been the commission's, desire to not silence, to hear from those that have some input. So I have told, and I don't remember his name, so I apologize for that. But if he's here and wishes to speak to this purchase, then certainly I will allow it. First of all, your name is what, sir? And if you'll come to you the person I spoke with and told you I would allow you and would limit you to the conversation. So you have 3 minutes, and I'm sorry, Mr. Williams.
What's his last name? What's your last name?
Christopher had his
Yeah, Mr.
push before this.
Oh,
I just didn't want to, I didn't want to. You can come back.
Okay. All right, if that's okay, Commissioner, I'll be happy to.
D, as in dog.
Oh. And if you'll get yourself close to the mic, so everybody can hear, and I don't think they heard, so identify yourself.
Sure, I'm James Lyle Alder. I live in District 10. If I may, just thank you all, the Honorable Commission, for letting us speak to you. And thank you, Mr. Atwood, for your commendable patience. I oppose the purchase of any new carceral property or infrastructure as long as issues of poverty, homelessness, drug addiction, domestic abuse remain largely neglected as they appear to be. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Commissioner Christopher.
Yes, thank you. One of the things that came up in our working group was this sort of offhand remark that if we have these properties, then if we need to expand the jail again down the road, then we have that option presented by these properties. And I don't think that we are following a very good path here. There are several of you commissioners who, and Mr. Jones, Mr. Porter, you've all been discussing this for over a decade, and I thank you for trying to find a solution. I've spent many hours this weekend researching archives, looking at past commission meetings, looking at some of the alternatives that were floated around previously. We still don't have a game plan. And my concern with these two purchases is that we're setting ourselves up to continue the downtown expansion indefinitely. That if we commit to these two properties, that is where we're going in another 15 or 20 years, that we're just going to continue to expand infrastructure into this particular corridor, which under the Cookeville 2030 plan is identified as residential and light commercial. These two properties are bordered by two historic neighborhoods, one official, one non-official, and an elementary school. I know you mentioned that you wanted to keep focus, but that really is relevant to where these two properties are situated.
If I may, Mr. Christopher, address what you just said, okay? And I certainly appreciate it, and I appreciate very much all of you who have taken the time to educate yourself to what we're talking about. That's so important. So to address what you just said, the only thing we're doing tonight is purchasing property. Anything in the future as far as expansion has to come back to this commission. What we do with those pieces of property are still decisions that are made down the road. We have not locked ourselves into anything with what we're going to do with those properties. All we're saying is we think the vote, and again, I'm not trying to encourage anybody one way or the other. It's not my job. But my job is to be clear. I don't think that your assumption that we've locked ourselves in is accurate personally, and I guess that's the point I want to try to make.
And I respectfully disagree. I appreciate your perspective, but I disagree on that. I think that if we are expanding our county footprint for the purpose of property associated with the jail, and it has already been tossed about in working groups that property could be future infrastructure expansion, and it was last week, then I think that we all need to be aware of this, where this could potentially go. And I just want to be on the record speaking to that on behalf of the people I represent in my district.
Well, and again, I'm not trying to take on the fight against anybody, but it also could become a park. At this point, it's not obligated to anything. So to infer that that the expansion of the jail is going to happen because we're buying two properties, again, respectfully to you, sir, maybe down the road this commission says, you know what, we don't need it. Let's put a park in there. Let's put green space. Let's do whatever. So locking in, I think, is the term that I've got to disagree with. Certainly, it could happen, but it can't happen until it comes back to this body and determines what we do with those two pieces of property. So that's I guess the inference I want to make. We're not locked into anything except purchase.
That's what we're, so I respectfully, and I appreciate it again very much because I know you've done your homework. I know you've worked hard. Any other points you wanted to make, Mr. Christopher?
Just to reiterate your comment about the park, I mean, this property is optioned for the purpose of a parking lot, 2 parking lots for the jail expansion. It is not being purchased for a park. And so my comment was to downstream after the parking lot purpose, which is supporting the reason why we're voting on this.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yes, Mr. Bennett.
I've got a question to follow up on that one. This is to Mayor Porter. On the property 1 and property 2, you've said the main purpose is for parking. Isn't that correct?
I said that we needed that property. If you're going to expand the jail in its current location, we've got to have more parking, yes.
Okay, so property 1, if we bought it, how soon are the architects saying we have to turn that into a parking lot?
That would probably have to be done once you build this addition to the jail. Parcel number 2 would be future down the road. If you decided to stay there 15, 20 years out, then parcel 2 would be used for parking. But we think we can get by with this parcel 1 for right now. But it's going to cost you more to buy one if you don't buy both of them.
Okay, so parcel 2 is not necessary for the current expansion plans we have right now. It's if we decide to expand 20 or 25 years down the road.
Once you expand the Justice Center, we're talking about 2 different things, okay? Talking about expanding the jail, and you're talking about expanding the Justice Center. Once you expand the Justice Center, it may be needed, or if we decide to buy the other piece of property, the Enoch property, you may not have to have it right now. But to have any kind of future expansion after this, you're going to need more of it. And the deal is $200,000 cheaper if you buy both of them now. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And the point, again, we're considering both of them. So to try to even separate them at this point of what do we need and what do we not need is not the vote we're fixing to take. We voted not to separate them, so we're voting to buy both right now. So everybody understand that, I hope. All right. Joe, I wasn't. Please, Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor, so again, just a question on both of those properties. They are suitable for parking. Geo work has been done, engineering's been done. Comment's been made about a sinkhole in one of the properties. Again, I know I'm bringing it back up, but I want to be sure this property is suitable for parking or any other venture for the future.
Now, I can't talk about any other venture. It depends on what you're going to do. But as far as parking, as far as we know, everything is good. Both of them have been parking lots now for some time. You've got big trucks parked on both parcels multiple times. Road graders, bulldozers, all kinds of things has been parked on them. So, I mean, they have been rocked, and the drainage has been put in to meet the city codes when the parcels were done. And so it wouldn't be any different than the parking lot that we just did at Spring and Maple, where that we went in and had to put all that fill rock in and put the drainage system in. These already have that. But if you decided you wanted to put a 5-story parking garage on one of them, until you did the core drilling and the engineering and everything, I can't tell you that up front. It would house that. But as far as a flat parking lot, I'm looking at my architects back here. As far as a flat parking lot, we think they're good, right? They're saying yes.
Okay, that answers your question, Commissioner. And any other questions or discussion on this motion? All right, folks, we're going to vote. Yes vote means purchase them. No vote means you're not for that, Mr. Clerk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. You favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
All right. Anyone wish to change their votes anywhere? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, 16 votes yes, 8 votes no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. I know it's been a trying time, and I appreciate your efforts and your education toward this. Mr. Chair?
That concludes fiscal review.
All right. Item number 3 is Nominating Committee.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Nominating Committee has 2 items. Item A, Nominating Committee recommends the following to be reappointed to the Audit Committee for 2-year terms to expire October 2022. Mr. Bob Duncan, Mr. Danny Brooks, Mr. Sam Sandlin, and Mr. William Clark, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? In favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, item B, Nominating Committee recommends the following to be appointed to the Judicial Commissioner Interview Committee for 2-year terms to expire in September of 2022, and that is Commissioner Jonathan Williams and Commissioner Jimmy Neal, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? And that includes any nominations from the floor. Seeing none, you favor the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes nominating.
Thank you very kindly. Report of special committees. Resolutions.
There are no resolutions, Mr. Chairman.
Notaries.
Notaries, got quite a list. Here we go. Linda Alcorn, Amy G. Allen, Gail Allred, Catherine Aquino, Michelle Baji, Noel Arbohannon, Tracy Bassell, Jolene Chorest, Rhonda Cole, Savannah Fairman, Joanne Hartley, Dwight Henry, David Horner, Adam W. Hunter, Susan F. Johnson, Tyler D. Langford, Amy F. Mayberry, Patricia G. Maxwell, Harold Ralph Maynard, Candace McNeil, Nancy Mija, Rachel M. Moses, Tina Pfeiffer, Amy Phillips, Kim Phillips, T. Danielle Ray, Kristen Reed, Janice Scarlett, Jerome Henry Soup Jr., and finally, Barry D. Wilmoth.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the notaries? Mr. Clerk.
All right, we have to vote notaries. If you'll please take your handsets. In favor of the motion, vote yes. Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
All right, anyone wish to change their vote? Good, thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I have 24 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain. Motion carries. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. I assume that it concludes that business. So we're to item E, which is other new business. I want to go ahead and cover the 2 points that we have in here, and then I am going to allow those who wanted to speak 3 minutes to do so, as I said. So item 1 is that we recognize the Highway Department inventory as of June 30th, 2020 as presented by Road Supervisor Randy Jones. Any questions about that? All we're doing is recognizing it. We so do. And 2 is to recognize cash flow analysis and monthly budget to annual report for the general purpose school fund. Any discussion about that or any questions? Okay, seeing none. Those of you who wish to speak before this body, as I said, we'll be happy to hear you. So if you will, raise your hands if you are one of those people. All right. Seeing I saw 4. If that becomes bigger, then so we'll do that. I'm going to start right here with the front, you, sir, because you're first that I see. Come to the mic. Identify yourself. The clerk, Mr. Neighbors, will be timing you for the 3 minutes that we have. So, Mr. Williams.
I just had the button pressed. I'd like to make a quick statement before everybody gets started.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I think some of the folks who are getting ready to speak are going to express concerns about the jail expansion and proximity to Capshaw School and the Capshaw Woods neighborhood, which, of course, is Kevin Christopher's and my district. I'm going to ask that the chairman of the commission or the mayor or whoever the appropriate person is, if we could somehow coordinate a joint work session between the county commission and the city council, because our expansion is in the heart of the city, and I want to be good neighbors and good partners with the city. This is, of course, not a requirement, but I think the whole process may go a little more smoothly if we're all pulling together, and we can work out some mutual accommodations to allow the county to do what it needs to do, but also try to mitigate the impact on traffic and aesthetics, et cetera, on the Capshaw Woods neighborhood and the Hudgens Street area. So I just wanted to express my desire for a joint work session that would include the architects and whoever else may be party to that, to make sure that we can work out whatever we need to work out for the benefit of everyone.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Williams. In order to make that a mandate, it would have to be put in the form of a motion. I understand the purpose of your comments, and certainly I think there's nobody sitting here, either city or county, who would be opposed to that. So that's certainly something we probably should consider beyond this point, and be sensitive to it. We do have an intergovernmental committee that functions, that has city representatives and county representatives involved, where those things are discussed. I've been a part of that committee. That's not to say that's the solution. I'm not suggesting that. But in the past, we have certainly had that dialogue with the city. And I think Mayor Porter will tell you that the relationship between city and county, I keep being ashamed, I guess, to tell you how long I've been here, but I've been here a long time, and I can tell you that relationship is better than it's ever been in the time that I've served as a commissioner. So I commend both the city and the county, our mayor, for working toward that end. So I appreciate your comments, and again, we'll try to address that in the future if when it arises. Okay?
Just before we actually vote to issue a bond and before the design is finalized.
Okay, thank you. And again, please, if you will, because you're masked, you'll need to get as close to the mic as you can. And the first thing I need you to do is to state your name and probably spell it.
Yeah, very clearly.
All right. My name is Nathan Gentry, Nathan-Gentry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And you have 3 minutes.
All right. You ready, Mr. Neighbors?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time to speak. My name is Nathan Gentry, and I live in Allgood and have spent a collective 26 years of my life here in Putnam County. Tonight, I'd like to address the entire community, actually. The topic surrounding the parking for and the expansion of the county jail has stirred a lot of discussions and a lot of opinion. I'd like to start with two very pointed questions. One, what is the root cause of crime and incarceration? And two, where have we failed as a community? There's an argument to address overcrowding, that those incarcerated for nonviolent crimes could receive an early release rather than expanding the jail, but that's an argument some of the commissioners say they would have listened to back in April, but not now. According to the Sheriff's Department, through Commissioner Donadio's public YouTube video, I really appreciate that, thank you. Our inmates are mostly either residents of Putnam County or people whose sentences are for offenses committed within Putnam County. That means the people crammed in that overcrowded building are our neighbors. Maybe some of you have family there. I'm certain some of you have friends. Our city council has recently demonstrated through their partnership with the SAS program that offering help is a better solution than punishing those in need. What is most concerning about this jail expansion is the idea that plots purchased for parking today may serve as expansion tomorrow. Are we exploring alternatives to incarceration? Are we considering early releases for nonviolent offenders? Why are we planning for future expansion instead of pursuing rehabilitation and opportunity improvement? People need access to certain resources, recovery support, mental health assistance, and more to avoid resorting to crime. If our county commission simply plans to expand and our courts don't provide early release for nonviolent crimes to address overcrowding, then it's up to the community to prevent that increase in crime. I do recall, and you might as well, that at least one violent offender was quickly released because they met bail, and those still residing within the jail can't make bail. they and those who care about them can't afford to purchase their release? How many of those are a lower threat to our community than violent offenders who can afford bail? To all our neighbors, as we watch this expansion construction, the jail is a reminder of decisions made in part because we failed to engage in the discussion here.
30 seconds.
Thank you. The jail is a reminder that we failed to be there for our neighbors. The jail is a reminder that if we want to improve our community, we must support our neighbors. Inclusion is the alternative to incarceration, but we have to work together to make it so. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the chance.
3 minutes.
Nathan, thank you very kindly. I appreciate that, and you were right on time.
Thank you, sir.
Let me make sure, again, if you raised your hand, the gentleman with the Tennessee flag mask.
I'm Councilman Mark Miller. I'm in Jordan and Jerry's district is where I live. Part of our goal as a city is to make our downtown attractive, and taking valuable property away from us being able to expand and make our downtown attractive is kind of hurtful for me. We haven't really had a discussion on this until we saw Jonathan Williams' post about it. The intergovernmental board is actually an economic development board. It's called the Intergovernmental Economic Development Board, and it doesn't always discuss these issues. I do just want you to think in the future that we're about to take these two pieces of property off the tax rolls forever. So we're not going to get high-end development there, like $400,000 tax homes or townhomes will not be ever on our property taxes. If we had mixed use there, we will never get the sales tax off of this. One thing I do ask is that we do follow city code whenever we do build the, I don't think we're going to build a park there, but when we do build a parking lot there, that we follow the city codes and follow the city standards, because one of the parking lots already, the sides are crumbling off of it, and that's, we wouldn't let any other developer come in and put a parking lot up and do that. And I do ask that the county take city codes into effect whenever we are talking about the aesthetic of those parking lots. And thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it very kindly, your being here. I know Vice Mayor, yes, sir, you're next. Yes, sir, I'll recognize you, sir.
My name is Ryan Steele. I live in Steele, S-T-E-E-L-E.
All right. Thank you. That mask works.
And you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. And thank all of you for the opportunity to speak. I object to the expansion of this jail or the parking lot or whatever it is on a number of different ways, but before I kind of get to them, I do want to echo Councilman Miller's sentiment that I haven't been super involved and knowledgeable about all of the local politics in the past, but I have been more involved here across the last year, and it's just not something that I was aware of or that I'd come across yet, and that I would have moved. I would have been here earlier. I would have been speaking. I would have been talking to my neighbors and community members. And I just wonder what the appropriate way would be to ask this body to either make a press release that is published in the newspaper, or to disseminate this information before the meeting, so that the approved agendas. I understand that they're posted, but just helping us to become more aware of what's going on there. I understand that the information is available, but it's just not always that easy to access. The other objections that I really have are related to the expansion of jails generally, and I have had assurances already, and Nathan Dodson through Donatio's post further confirmed that this isn't an issue where the city or the county are trying to make money by renting out beds. I would like to know what the percentage of the population is that are not county residents and those kinds of things. I think that's relevant because I think that that's not an ideal situation for Putnam County or Cookeville to be involved in, it's not a prison for profit system, but it is inappropriate, and I think it incentivizes at least not looking at alternatives to incarceration when we're dealing with our neighbors and loved ones. I believe this money could be used more effectively for programs that Nathan spoke about extensively. I understand that a lot of these issues are not the purview of this commission. Reducing cash bail and preventing people who, had nonviolent drug offense or something like that. They don't have bail, and so they're stuck in jail, and lose their job, and then that's just a terrible system anyway that I understand that this commission isn't responsible for, but I think that they should be considering when they consider the purchase of a $1.3 million thing. I can tell that my time is running out.
It is out, yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Time's up.
Thank you very kindly. And we don't want to get into back and forth, but any of our business is always on our website, easily accessible to discover. So if you have any problem with that, any questions that you have, and you raised a question about the population, is certainly, and you're entitled to that information if you'd call the mayor's office or the sheriff's office. Either one, that information I'm sure would be supplied to you to be able to determine how many and who the population is. So, Vice Mayor, you're recognized, so please come forward. We'd be glad to hear from you. Again, state your name, Lauren, and please.
That's fine. I am Lauren Wheaton, resident of Cookeville, and thank y'all for letting me come speak tonight. I come to you tonight with the concerns of residents of the neighborhoods, business owners, and parents of children who attend Capshaw Elementary that surround the jail. I also come to you as a city councilman to see if there's a way that this jail expansion plan can utilize both of our governments and the community. I'm also looking for a solution that possibly could be more sustainable. Let me be clear, I'm for the jail expansion. I know it needs to happen, and I know this decision is one that's been delayed for a long time. But I also understand that we might have a little more time to discuss this because currently the jail is not overcrowded due to COVID restrictions. And also by utilizing each other's governments and the community, we might have other opportunities to discuss. With that being said, I would like to know what opportunities have we looked at? I understand a new jail could cost $100 million, and I would like to know what that looks like, what plans have been drawn up, what cost estimates have been done, what plots of land have been looked at, what purchase prices and what's appraisals. I also would like to know what discussion there has been about the current land, selling it, the increased tax revenue that could come from commercially or residentially developing it. But finally, and most importantly, I would like to know what discussion has been had about a jail expansion this size impacting this area, these residents, these businesses, this elementary school where children play on a playground less than 1,000 feet from a jail. I understand that the jail now is run very efficiently and any future jail will be run efficiently. But what discussion has been had about a 500 to 800 bed jail as opposed to the 251 that is currently there and how it will impact this area? With that being said, this is where my councilman hat comes in, and I would like to see, as Jonathan recommended, some type of joint committee where councilmen and commissioners can work together with the sheriff's department to find out if we've exhausted all of our opportunities before we put this Band-Aid on the expansion. I understand that would be courtesy. The county nor the sheriff department has to do that. But in doing so, I hope that we could find a solution that if this is the only way to expand, we are making sure that there's plans for no more expansion on this property, that there are plans to minimize the impact, including buffers, increased security, light pollution, traffic, parking problems, and also that there's a plan to make sure that any future jail expansion does happen on a different property and that we're looking forward to that. Thank you all again for letting me speak. I've really enjoyed coming to my first commissioner meeting. Thank you.
Lying will get you nowhere. Enjoyed. I appreciate all of you. Is there any more other person? All right. I'll recognize the young lady. Yes, ma'am. Again, please identify yourself. I can't see half of you with masks and might not know you anyways personally, but.
I understand. All right, that's clear enough. Hello, my name is Jordan Strelecki. That's Jordan, Jordyn, Strelecki, Strlecky. I am a resident of Putnam County, and I'm here today to speak in opposition to a jail expansion. I understand that the property was voted to be bought tonight, and so there's nothing that we can do about that. But moving forward, I would like it to be considered everything that was talked about tonight, perhaps looking at different approaches for dealing with criminally and mentally charged people other than incarceration. I would also like to suggest to the commission to possibly look into an extensively researched study under the name Broken Ground: Why America Keeps Building More Jails and What It Can Do Instead. It's produced by the Vera Institute of Justice and Liberty and supported by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, which is a reputable foundation that helps across America. The study personally studied over 77 counties in 31 states with their active proposals to expand their jail systems or to renovate their jail systems or to put new policies in place that would avoid having to do an expansion or a renovation. Many of them decided in the end not to do the expansion because they found alternative ways to reduce the population of the jail and to make their current facilities more functional for the population that they were currently housing. An excerpt says, "The existence of more jail beds does not address the underlying factors driving jail population growth. With these factors left unaddressed, the country risks an ever-increasing jail population. Can counties both build more jail beds and invest in policy change to reduce jail populations over time? Many try, but find that their motivation to do so is reduced with increased capacity now existing for decades to come. Services in the jail rarely match the quality of services in the community, and even the most ambitious plans to radically improve health care through the jail beds often fall short." They found time and time again in their studies that the expansion did not help improve the quality, nor did it help the city with controlling the jail population. Rather, more people from outside of the city were housed. People weren't given the opportunities to bond themselves out because the bed was available, and the expansion didn't make it so that the population could be kept at a maintained lower amount. Instead, it gave the city and the surrounding cities the opportunity to incarcerate and hold people longer, rather than addressing the reasons that they're there to begin with, many of which are nonviolent crimes or crimes related to mental instability. I urge you to look into this article. It's extremely informed. It was published in 2019, goes back to statistics as far as the 1980s. It lists all of its resources and has lots of statistics available to you. There are many other options rather than adding more beds and more jail space for incarcerated humans. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate your comments. I had one more hand. I'll recognize that and we'll move forward. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Binkley, Binkley.
Thank you, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'm a Cookville resident. I also am a local attorney. I have an office up on the square. I suppose I'm impacted by this, what we're talking about. I am here to discuss, by the way, the proposed or jail expansion that's already, my understanding, has been voted in. I can tell you, as a lawyer, as part of my my Southern heritage here as a lawyer, I can find any courthouse in the South by driving to a town square and then looking in the middle, and there's the courthouse. This county has multiple courts in operation at the same time. Sometimes we have 4 or 5 courts. There's no way our courthouse would be able to sustain current operations. Our county became so fortunate to obtain land in the middle of town for this justice center. So now the question is, what do we do with that land? I suggest to this whole commission that a jail in the center of our special town is a misuse of that special place. There are 2 crown jewels in the county property. I call it portfolio for the lack of a better word at the moment. We've got the fairground. Would I ever suggest putting a jail in the fairground? No. I wouldn't suggest putting one where we're talking about today either. Right beside expanding it to its footprint where it exists today. I think that's a misuse of a scarce resource. The county has only so much land. I applaud when opportunity presents itself. I applaud the county. We bought some land today as a county, as a community. And when the opportunity is there, you take it, and then there will be further uses down the road. But as far as a jail expansion, it sounds to me, from my understanding, that it's urgent, if not a crisis, and we do need to move forward with a solution. But it's where do we put that solution? Do we put it in the middle of town for every visitor to come and see right there in the middle of Cookeville a massive jail complex, or do we consider other opportunities outside, further out in the community where there's land to grow? And so my understanding is that no project has been funded. And so I asked this commission to, in future work sessions, consider funding, to consider funding a purchase of other land out in the community, further out, say on the 5th interchange, and continue funding, consider funding something that works where there's room to expand.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that very much, Andrew. And I appreciate all of you being here. I hope you felt that you were welcome, that we received you well, because certainly, again, it is not our intention. Not a soul you're sitting here that's been elected to this position wants to silence the community. We represent you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for voicing. The world, according to Mike, I believe leadership is about a vision. I believe it's looking out there, as you have all indicated, and seeing where you need to go, developing a plan as to how you're going to get there, and then saying, follow me, I'm going to lead you there. That's leadership. This commission, I believe, has done that. We've been working on the things that we've talked about tonight for 2.5 years. This is not a knee-jerk reaction. This is certainly taken a lot of effort by a lot of people to get us where we are today. And Andrew, to address what you said, again, we need to still continue the vision, to see where we need to go, and then develop a plan to get there. Commissioners, I'm sorry. I appreciate, you know how much I appreciate you guys being here, participating. We've done a lot tonight. Is there any other business?
Mr. Donadio.
Mr. Joe, please, yes.
Mayor Porter, you may have said this already, I may have missed it. Are we going to have a work session to discuss the old Fairgrounds property?
It'll be on the planning committee agenda for next month.
Okay,
That's what y'all voted to do.
I'm sorry, I was distracted. Joe, did you get your question or?
Yeah, he said it is on the agenda for next month. Okay, work session.
And does that satisfy you? All right. Mr. Nadu was up there. He said he's fine. Any other statements? Jerry Ford, yes, sir, please.
I've left.
He's left. He's left. Okay. He's going to be honored him to speak. Any other business? Folks, thanks again. You've done a great job. I appreciate you. We stand adjourned.